Hello and welcome to Planet Phoenix. Today we're going to take the old idea of what a kitchen table is and see if we can't give it new life into something uniquely remarkable. At this point I'm just trying to figure out the base for this table. I plan on using two of these legs on either end. I know it's going to be about 30 inches tall and it's about 36 inches wide, I believe, once I end up milling down all of the walnut wood, because the base will be walnut, the tabletop will be walnut, the base will be steel. And I know I want to put some holes in it like you see here, but I'm not sure where to place them. I want to make sure it looks proper. Aesthetically, I want to try to get my angles right. And for me, just laying some tape out like this is the easiest way to calculate all of that. This saw was one of the best investments I ever made as far as trying to cut steel. If you've ever used one of those abrasive blades, the blade will wander on you and it takes forever and it's a huge mess. And you can see I'm pushing this to the limits. It's about all I can handle. I don't even think it cut quite all the way through with these big 6-inch I-beams, but boy, it makes a nice clean cut, which sure helps when you set things up to weld everything perfectly straight. At this point I'm just trying to fine-tune everything, make sure we have exactly 90 degrees. You know, you think with these big old 6-inch I-beams everything was perfectly 90 degrees and symmetrical, but they're not. So you literally have to grind some parts and pieces away so they will stand up straight when it comes down to it. When I put it on the base to weld everything together, you need it to be perfect. You got to put a tabletop on this and you don't want the tabletop to slope one way or another. That's no bueno. Here I'm just trying to make a few quick patterns in some thick paper so I can do some cutouts. I want to add some what I call webbing, just some metal pieces to fit in there, just simply because I think it looks sharp that way. I'm sure you don't need it structurally. I think these beams are plenty heavy enough, but this is the way you craft out these little pieces that will get welded in here, as you will see. Drilling these holes really put my drill press to work. It really struggled to get through this. It's probably about the max. I mean, with a hole saw, I think these are about 2-inch holes, so that, you know, it's requiring quite a bit of torque here. It did make it through. We got all the holes done and they're nice and clean, but my drill press was screaming at me for sure. Here I'm making the tops to the table base where the table will actually sit on top of and attach to, and I need to make the slots in there so the table can expand and contract. At this point I'm getting real tired of trying to pick this monster up. I had a donut instead of my Wheaties this morning, so it's just a lot easier with the chain. Now we have both bases are done, but at this point we also made a change in the build. Decided to, instead of using 2 of these, we'll use 1 for the table, and then we'll make a side table, which you'll see in a future video, that'll have a wine cabinet and some storage, and then you'll have matching bases. So in order to have 1, I need to expand this base a little bit so it doesn't tip over, of course. It's a little more stable. So that's what I'm doing here, is just expanding out that base. So we're welding on some extra metal there, and have to grind it all off, pretty it up, etc. I was a little worried at this point with all that welding that we might have a lot of bending on the bottom of this platform, but it really wasn't too bad. A few bangs here and there, a little persuasion, and everything was pretty flat. Now we're adding some acetone, cleaning up the steel, get it ready for some bluing, which is actually an acid that will turn it more black, or essentially it rusts it. But then you take a steel wool and you can kind of take the rust off from there. I'm not a big fan of how steel just rusts out. I don't like that look. So we take it back off, and then we're going to strategically grind some of it off so you can have real sharp, shiny edges to really highlight the contrast between what we're trying to do here, is turning a black steel with some really silver bright spots to it. I don't know how well this shows up on camera, but you can see here taking off all of the spots where we're taking it right down to bare metal, so that silver really pops within the circles and on all of the edges, just to really give it a real nice contrast. And the penetrol here just really seals it all. It's a clear, gives it a little bit of a gloss, but it's a clear coat, so it won't rust or corrode or anything like that. And to me, it just gives it a real sharp look, and it highlights all the parts we just grinded off to really give it the contrast. Now it's time to start on that tabletop, and I have a real wide piece of walnut here, and it has some serious cupping in it. So when you cut them in half, and then you try to plane them back down, you waste less wood this way. So I'm just cutting this thing right in half before I start planing all of the lumber down to get it nice and square and flat. There's something real satisfying about planing lumber like this, because it is just so rough when you start to put it in through the planer. And then as it comes out, it really gives it a nice sharp finish on it, and you start to see all the grain literally changes colors and everything right in front of your face. It's a beautiful thing. And this particular board, we have a little bit of a twist in it, so I have a planer sled that I build here for it. It keeps the high points up so we can just knock the high points down. And it saves the thickness of the wood and takes the twist out of it. I don't show you all the boards I planed. It takes quite some time to get to this point to get them all ready, as you'll see here in a little bit. And the track saw here just gets a nice square edge now that we're flat on the top. Now we can get our 90-degree flat edge, which is very critical when you're trying to join lumber together. And I think we have maybe 6 pieces we end up putting together, if I remember correctly. Now, I don't show all the cutting of all the edges here, but they're all done now. Now we're trying to figure out the location of where I'm going to put this LED light and this angelic symbol into the table. So we're just laying out here. I got it figured out at this point. Now I'm preparing to join all of the boards with a biscuit joiner. At this stage, I'm putting together the 3 boards that the angelic symbol will be. centered and cut into. And I have to do it with only 3 boards because it's the only way it will fit inside of my CNC machine. I just love this concept of this angelic symbol, which means optimum health. And what a better way to show that and feel that in a kitchen table sitting around with friends and family. So I try not to bore you here with a bunch of sanding, just show you bits and pieces of the process, because this entire build took about a month. I think we packed it into a 15-minute video. So try to keep it interesting without boring everybody. Now I've thrown the other 2 boards on here so I can measure and get dead center for this angelic symbol. You can also see why I only put 3 boards together, because that's all I could fit in the middle of my CNC. I didn't cut all the way through the tabletop on this. I left about 3/16 or so I could fill it with clear epoxy, and then I'll later cut out that back once everything is solid, as you'll see here to come. And I'm filling all the knots in the holes with some mahogany epoxy color. Now I'm just putting that last layer of epoxy in there, and this will be a white, opaque white, maybe the last 1/8 of an inch or so the LED lights will still shine through. If you want to put different colors through, that'll also radiate right on through this opaque white. So now everything's dry, sanded down, and now it's time to cut out that back side, that last 3/16 or so of wood, so we can attach our LEDs to shine through. Very nerve-wracking to do this. Make sure you cut this right. So it has to be perfect. Another very satisfying moment when you see the CNC start to cut out that last 3/16 or so, and you can start to see the backside of that epoxy coming through. I don't know why, but that's very satisfying. And now it's time to smooth the sides out and give a little edge here, because I'm going to be putting a metal plate or a cover over all of this so the light doesn't just shine down underneath the table. And just sanding it all down, try to give it a nice smooth surface, of course, because you want the light to be able to get through there as best as possible. And instead of taking a bunch of grits and then polishing it, I just added a little bit of clear epoxy right back over the top, and that just clears it right back out again instead of doing all the polish work. And now that all of the epoxy and LED work is done, it's time to reattach those last 2 boards and put the whole table back together. Now again, I'm not going to bore you with all the sanding and all the grits that I went through, but it's time to sand it all down, smooth it all out, and trim off the edges. Get everything nice and square. These LEDs, I bought a battery pack for them, so it doesn't always have to be constantly plugged in. You can actually take that black part there and take it off and recharge it, or you can run a plug up to it when it needs to be recharged. I forget the life of the pack, but it's pretty significant. I think you'd almost rarely have to do that. So just trying to figure out exactly how we're going to do that, notch this out so I can get the wire through it and deburr it so it doesn't cut the wire, and actually coming together pretty nice. Because we changed the build and now we have one singular leg, I have to find a new way to attach the tabletop to the base. So I'm cutting up and welding together a few more brackets to hold that together, along with all the angle iron that will go along the base, one for aesthetics so I can put my rivets in there, and also to keep the table nice and flat and straight for the future. On every one of these, you need to figure out where you're going to put each rivet. And because it's going to be attached to the bottom of the table, you also have to make slots in there so you can attach it to the wood and allow for the expansion and contraction of the walnut tabletop. And now we're back removing all the mill scale from the steel so we can blue it or put the acid on there to essentially turn it black. And just putting the final touches on here with the rivets for aesthetics. And 3 coats of wipe-on polyurethane is what I chose to finish this tabletop with. I'm glad you hung it out there with me. I know it was kind of a long video. It's hard to wrap up a month's worth of work in just a few minutes, but there you go. Thanks for watching.